The Torah is referring to locations, Midbar, Arova, Mulsuf. Then he says, Bein Purim, Bein Tofel, Velova. So Rashi, it says, Amr Reb Yochanan, Chazarnu al kol amikro, lo motzenu mokum sheshmol Tofel Velova. Says he reviewed all the psukim in the Torah, Nach, in the Novi, and there's no such location. He's rebuking them, admonishing them regarding the mun, that they had an issue with mun, which is white. We're disgusted with this wafer-like food. B'chatzeros, b'machlokoso shel Korach, Tavracha Amalem, Hoyelchem Lumo, B'mashosu, Sisi, Lemirium, B'chatzeros, B'shuloshon Hara, Vatem Nidbartem, B'mokom. The Torah tells us what is to juxtapose the story of the Meraglim to the sin of Miriam, that Rishon Elu, those are Rashi's words quoting Chazal, that these evil people, they saw what happened to Miriam because she spoke out of turn. And they did not take Musar, and they followed, and they did even worse. They spoke against Hashem. Now, this is interesting. V'dizov. What's dizov? Olchichon ala egel, she'osu b'shul rov v'zov shoylehem. He's admonishing them because of the Chet Egel, which came about because Hashem gave this unlimited amount of gold when they left Egypt. Shenemar. I've given the abundance of silver, and then they used the gold for the Baal, for the idolatry. So what's the rebuke of the gold? Here I've given them so much, and they should have understood and valued myself and the value of that, and instead of using it for a mitzvah, they used it to go against me. They used it for idolatry, for paganism. We'd mentioned last year when we learned this, that Moshe Rabbeinu, when he came to the defense of Klal Yisrael, when Hashem says, I will destroy them by the Chet Egel, Moshe Rabbeinu says to Hashem, they're not fully responsible for what they had done. Now, it's interesting. In terms of the world condemning us for the Chet Egel, that we're fully culpable, it's clear we didn't initiate it, because the Torah tells us by the Chet Egel, it says Elo Elohecha Yisrael. This is your God Israel. That means the Erev Rav. They're the ones who initiated it. I mean, seemingly that should have been enough of a defense. Nevertheless, being where you are after hearing the Aseret Dibros at Sinai, I mean, how do you go, despite the influence of the Erev Rav, the rabble, how were you drawn into this? So there's a claim against us. Moshe Rabbeinu says in Brochos, what he says to Hashem, they're not fully culpable for being drawn in. Why? Because you've given them so much gold, so much wealth, they become intoxicated with this. And the Gemara says, what is it analogous to? A king says to his son, the prince, first he goes him, he has him bathed, and he puts him on the finest clothing, puts a gold necklace around his neck, he coifers him, and he gives him a purse of gold. And he tells him, walk in front of the brothel, but don't go into the brothel. That's what he tells his son. So the Gemara says, if you tell him you're setting him up for this fall, and he's in front of the brothel, do you expect him not to go into the brothel? So Hashem, Kaviyochol, has a degree of what? Of not culpability, but he set the setting for us to be vulnerable for this. Therefore, the Jews are not fully, even from their side, despite the fact that they heard the Sinai, you created a setting where it's almost not possible not to be drawn into this. That was Moshe Rabbeinu's defense of Dizov. So we find the same words which he's using over here to rebuke us. Here Hashem has given us so much, and what do you do with it? You use it to go against him. There he's using it as a defense, because you've given him so much, therefore that created this vulnerability to be drawn into the influence of the rabble. Okay? So we cite the same thing, the two sides of the same coin. In one moment, it's rebuke, and initially, when he came to our defense, it was a defense that we're not fully held culpable because Hashem created the setting. But what's interesting, the Gemara tells us that when the Jews left Egypt, no Jew left less than with 10 pack animals laden with gold and silver, because that was the mitzvah. That when we leave, we should leave with this great wealth, and you should borrow from your neighbors, klei chesed, klei zov, the gold and silver, gold vessels, and so on and so forth. So the promise to Avram Avinu was, and Hashem says to Moshe, make sure they borrow. Daber nobos neom. Please speak to them, encourage them to borrow. Shlo yomos tzaddik. So that tzaddik Avram Avinu shouldn't come with a claim against me. They were enslaved and afflicted. That part of the decree was fulfilled, but was not fulfilled. I mean, this brought about the greatest calamity, because it was that these of we had so much gold. That was the basis for our weakness, for our vulnerability. I mean, so it comes out. This bracha ultimately turned out to be the greatest klala. It was the curse. That's what happened. Because the Gemara says clearly, if not for Chet Egel, what would have been? What would have been? The world would have achieved its level of perfection. When we said Nasiv and Nishma received the Torah, became Odom, and we reverted back to pre-sin of Adam. The only reason why the Gemara says we reverted back to post-sin, because of the Chet Egel. So the Akach Yeshu B'chush Godel turned out to be the greatest curse. That's what happened. Today we're beginning as Tisha B'Av, the countdown to Tisha B'Av, Rosh Chodesh Av, but it started with Shrias HaLuchos. Shivasa B'Tammuz, Hashem broke it. Moshe Rabbeinu broke the Luchos. Those are Luchos Rishonos. When he broke those Luchos, what happened? At that moment, what was supposed to happen? We were supposed to achieve the ultimate level of Adam. And if he wouldn't have broken the Luchos, the world would have reached its level of perfection, and we would have what? We would have been eternal people. But because the Luchos were broken, therefore the world took a different direction. We went off the cliff, and we still haven't climbed back. It'll be Moshe Mashiach. That was the breaking of the Luchos. If we wouldn't have done the Egel, the Luchos would have been permanent. There wouldn't have been a need for Luchos Shnios, for a second set of tablets. So it comes out, it's interesting. The ultimate promise to Avram Avinu, which Moshe Rabbeinu was told, please tell them to borrow, is ultimately which brought the house down. And now he's rebuking us for the same basis for our defense is the rebuke. But you understand, it's true. But look what you've done. As we always say, every test is only a test because you could meet the challenge. You could have met the challenge. It was a difficult challenge, but you could have met it. Therefore, these are, after Hashem gives you so much, how do you go do this? Because it was still within your ability to withstand the test and meet the challenge. Hashem broke the Luchos. Hashem says to him, the Luchos Asher Shibarto, the Luchos that you broke. So the Gemara tells us, Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, I want to give you a great thank you that you broke the Luchos. Because if you wouldn't have broken the Luchos, I would have had to destroy the Jewish people. Why? Because breaking Luchos was the equivalent of an annulment. And as a result of that, that's the reason why they deserve to be punished, but not to be destroyed. But if the marriage contract isn't in place and they cross that line, they cannot continue. So because we failed with the Chet Egel, the Luchos had to be broken because that was the annulment of the relationship. So that was like a a sort of retroactive annullment's retroactive. Therefore, the claim against us is not to the same degree.
Recording in.
We say in the Shemon Esrei, Gomel chasodim tovim lamo Yisrael. Right in the morning we say, Baruch Hashem, Gomel chasodim tovim lamo Yisrael. Hashem is Gomel chasodim tovim. Right, that's what we say. We should say Gomel chasodim. What's chasodim tovim? Every morning, the Birchas HaShachar. We begin the Birchas, we conclude Birchas HaShachar, Baruch Hashem, Gomel chasodim tovim lamo Yisrael. Gomel chasodim. What do we have to add the word tovim? And then we say in Shemon Esrei, Gomel chasodim v'konei hakol. Hashem is Gomel chasodim tovim, and He acquires everything. He owns everything. Again, there's this re-emphasis of the word tovim. Hashem's chesed is tovim. How's it tovim? It's understood it's tovim. So maybe you'll say that what we saw as the ultimate when we left Egypt, Akein Yitzim Chush Gadol was the ultimate good. But what happened? That was the basis for the disaster. Because only because we have this level of wealth were we drawn into the eagle. We participated. We donated the gold. That's what the eagle was made of. If they wouldn't have had gold, the eagle wouldn't have come about. So is that Gomel Chasodim Tovim? So evidently it is. Unless we won't classify it as Chasodim, and that's not Chesed. Gomel Chasodim Tovim. Maybe when he does Chesed, it's Tovim. There are other things, it's not Chesed. That there was paying a debt. Akachen Yesh Mechush Gadol is a debt. Hashem said, you're going to work all those years, you have to be compensated. It may not be Tovim, because it has a very negative side to it. You become intoxicated with it, which ultimately will lead to a disaster. So I'm not sure. The way I always understood Gomel Chasodim Tov is because, as the Gemara tells us in Brachos, Geshem Shevochan Al Tov, Kachem Brochan Al Ra, that ultimately everything is now best interest. Even the greatest challenge, even though there's a chance we could fail, but because we could succeed, that would be the ultimate Gomel Chasodim Tovim. That will we fail because we've chosen to fail. But in terms of Hashem's intent, it's if we meet the challenge, we ultimately achieve the ultimate level. So I'm not sure Gomel Chasodim is the wealth we took out of Egypt. Does that go under the rubric of Chasodim Tovim, or that we say is paying the debt? That's a chov. Prius chov. Hashem had a chov. He had to pay a debt, as He says to Moshe Rabbeinu. Shlo yomer tzaddik. That tzaddik shouldn't say the first part of the tree was carried out, and the second part of what I had said was not carried out. Eina achbar ganov ela chura ganov. Hear this? When the mouse steals the cheese, the mouse is not the thief. You know what the thief is? The hole of escape. Because there's a hole where it could escape, that's the reason why the mouse steals the cheese. But if the mouse would not have a location to escape, he would never steal the cheese. That's the Gemara Brachos. Lo achbar in Sanhedrin. Lo achbar ganov. The achbar is the mouse. The rodent is not the thief, but the chura, the chor in the wall where it runs into, that's the ganov. If we wouldn't have gold, whatever we would have seen, there's no way we would have done idolatry. There wouldn't have been a consideration. You need the means to sin. One time, drugs was only people of great wealth could afford drugs. The average person wasn't a drug addict. The wealthy, they had that issue. Today, it's available to everyone. So you need money to sin. You need means to sin. The gold was the means to sin. So even if they would have seen the world turning dark and Moshe Rabbeinu being carried in Shamayim, and they said Moshe died, and what do you do now? You're locked in a box. Can't go anywhere. There's no escape. The rabbi said, no, there isn't an escape. You see, you have all this gold, participate. We have a route to escape, to go back to idolatry, because they originally were idolaters. But if there's no gold, The Erev Rav couldn't made this play against them. Let's make a golden calf. They couldn't make it because there was no gold. So it was a combination of many things being in place, which caused them to actually be drawn in here and cross that line. We never find until this moment that Moshe Rabbeinu rebuked, admonished the Jewish people. Why? Because it's Eila Hadvarim. These are the words. Eila is always an exclusion. These are the words, meaning this is the first time. So we find by Shimon Nohamorim, when they asked for water in a disrespectful way, he says, "Hear you rebellious people." So Rav Chaim says that when he rebuked them, that was only that segment that came approaching for the water. It wasn't the whole Klal Yisrael. Here, when he's given the Musar, he's admonishing them, rebuking them, it's Kol Yisrael. Every Jew is there. So this is the first time in all the years that he's leading us, that he's rebuking us, and to the last 36 days of his life. Eila, the gematria, the miracle value of Eila is 36. El Kol Yisrael. So he explains that this rebuke was special for many reasons. He says because since Moshe Rabbeinu, we know this is Mishnah Torah, he's reviewing everything, because this will set things in place for till the end of time, that we should be in touch with the mitzvahs as we should be. The rebuke which he's giving us now, this is the ultimate value because it's necessary to keep us in check till the end of time. Even though we failed with the Churban Abayis, we had many failings, but if he wouldn't have initially predicated everything on this rebuke, it would have been a lot worse. So this is to guarantee the eternity of Klal Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu, 36 days before he passes away, he rebukes, he admonishes us for our past to appreciate the wrong, that we should not repeat it again in the future. Even though we repeated many things, but at least there was a new understanding, as the Ramban said, that, God is forgiving. Despite your failings, you're still here. You're still thriving. So you should know there's always a way to come back. You could always come back. The Gemara tells us in Shabbos and in Nochos, based on the pasuk in Tehillim, Ki b'ko Hashem tzur olamim. Hashem created the world with two letters, the letter Yud and the letter Hey. Olam haba, the spiritual world was created with the spirituality letter Yud, and the letter Hey was used to create Olam hazeh, the physical world. That's what it was used for. Samar asks, why was the letter Hey? Why was that letter chosen to create the physical world? Because the shape of the letter Hey indicates and tells you what exactly physical life is all about. When we live in this physical existence, there's a wide gap between the right leg of the hay and the left leg of the hay. What does that indicate? That a person has free choice. If you want to go into free fall, you could go, the world is wide open to you. Anything you want to do, you're able to do. God forbid, you're able to forfeit everything that you're supposed to be, to give it up. However, Hashem says, but you can always come back. You can always do tshuva. And that's the opening between the left leg and the top. That's what it signifies. You can always come back. So Mar asks a question, why does he have to come back through that small opening? Why doesn't he come back in the same route that he exited? Let him come back in the same route, come back the same route. So the Gemara says, because the route you exited, you can't come back the same way. It's not going to work. You have to come back. You have to take another route back. To do tshuva, you have to come through that small opening between the left leg and the top of the hay, which is the equivalent of the dalit. That's what the Gemara says. So what is it? The world is challenge. The challenge is you can do anything you want. You go into free fall. But despite when you go into free fall, Hashem says there's always a way to come back. But you come back through that small opening. So if you remember, we studied the Ramak in the Talmud Dvorah, he explains this way. We read in Pirkei Avos, says, "Asay siyog l'Torah." We have to make fences. Because we don't make fences, since there is a certain degree of lack of cognizance, we're going to fail. So by making fences, we distance ourselves from the place where we could sin, so we keep our distance. So he explains this way. A person who's never sinned before, or not sinned seriously, what type of fence does he need? He needs a slide fence. The example is on a road that only motor scooters go. The guardrail doesn't have to be a very strong guardrail, because if you hit it, even with a motor scooter, you're not going off the cliff. The wire on the guardrail is enough to hold you back. But if you have Mack trucks going down that highway, or large vehicles, you need a very strong guardrail. Otherwise, you go straight through the guardrail. A person who's sinned before, which means he went beyond the end, he can't live at the edge. I'll make a slight fence. Slight fence is not enough. But since he violated and transgressed so many times, he needs something very strong to hold him back. So therefore, how does he have to live his life? He has to go through the top. He has to be near the top. The distance that he has to be from where he went has to be endlessly far away from there. Because if he gets too close, he's ultimately is going to be redrawn into where he shouldn't be. But a person never sinned or didn't sin that seriously, he could go near the edge. Because since he doesn't need that level of fence. That's the idea. That's what the hay signifies. If you were a sinner, you have to come at the rooftop. You have to keep yourself pressed to the top. Because if you don't keep yourself pressed to the top, you're going to fall out. That's the level of fence you need. But the ordinary Jew, the Jew who's not a serious sinner, he doesn't need that degree of fence to prevent him from going off the cliff. The Musar he's giving us now addresses every level, every Jew, whatever level you are at. This is crucial and essential. With all the fences in the world, if Moshe Rabbeinu wouldn't have given this admonishment now, which is the admonishment till the end of time, God, Chas v'Shalom, it wouldn't have been with our ability to be able to contend with all the challenges of life. But understanding and learning from what he taught us and what he communicated to us, now we have the background to be able to contend with whatever the challenge may be. Good.
Before this, the Jews did not have the ability to
contend with everything?
Yeah.
No, before this, what was the setting? We had the Aniyah Kavod, which we were engulfed with spirituality, Hashem's presence. We had Moshe Rabbeinu as our leader. We had the mun, and we had the bear. The setting was a setting which it was impossible to deny. It was Shvisa Hashem Negdi Somit. Every Jew was Shvisa Hashem Negdi Somit. Every Jew. And despite that, within that context, we sinned many times. So now that all that is going to disappear. Once we cross the Yarden, it's all over. We're all by ourselves. Now, what's going to hold us in place until the end of time? Moshe is not here. Dan Yaakov is not here. The Mon is not here. The Be'er Shel Miriam is not here. What's going to happen? We're being abandoned. Hashem says no. Moshe Rabbeinu says, this Musar that I'm giving you now, and if you take everything into consideration that I'm forewarning you, you're going to be able to be steadfast and be able to toe the line. That's what he's telling Klal Yisrael now. It says, based on Pasuk Tehillim, that if not for Hashem's continuous intervention, it's impossible to stand up against the challenges of the Yetzer Hara. Ilmole Hashem lo yochol. If not for Hashem's, the Satan wants to literally trap up the tzaddik that he cannot survive. It's only because of Hashem's intervention, that's why the Yetzer Hara doesn't succeed. That's the reason. Meaning, you could be the most brilliant person in the world. We find Elisha ben Avuyo. Acher, he was the Rebbe of Meir. Look what happened to him. He went off the cliff. God forbid. He said, "Les din les dayin." We saw something happen. He saw a child being instructed by his father to climb a tree to send off a mother bird. Because the Torah says, Shluch HaKan, you have to send off the mother bird before you take the chicks or the eggs. And the Torah says, for doing that mitzvah, you merit arichas yomim. And for kibbur of aim, you merit arichas yomim. So here we have arichas yomim compounded, and the child goes and he falls to his death. What did Elisha ben Avuya say? Les din les dayin. He says, if this is what it's about, les din chas v'shol les dayin. There's no judgment, there's no judge. I'm out of here. And where does he end up? This is the Rebbe or Remeir. He goes to a brothel. That's what he does. And before he actually commits the act, it was Shabbos, he takes a turnip and pulls it out of the ground. He violates Shabbos. He's in violation of kotzer, of reaping. How's it possible? So the Gemara asked the question, why didn't the Torah protect him, so on and so forth? If Hashem doesn't protect you, he could actually run rings around us and convince us that regardless of what you know, what you think, it's permissible. And you're permitted to cross that line. No matter who you are. And the Gemara asks, why did he merit? So the Gemara says, because he had something in his background that he was involved in simultaneously, therefore the Torah did not protect him. For that reason. There's the Rebbe or Remeir. And Remeir studied Torah from even after the story. And the Gemara asks, Yerushalmi, how do you study Torah? The halacha is, unless the Rebbe is Doman Malach Hashem Tzvados, you're not permitted to study Torah from such a person. So how did Remeir study Torah from Acher, from Elisha Barakuyo? So Morris says, because Remeir was at a level that he was able to discern between the rind and the fruit. Anybody else, you take it all. You swallow the good and the bad. Therefore, we have to stay away from this kind of person. But Remeir was at such a level, he was able to filter out the good and leave the bad. But anybody other than that is not permitted to study from such a person. For exactly this reason, because the influences and what will be communicated simultaneously with the good, you'll absorb plenty of the bad, therefore you have to stay away. If he had so much Torah, the Torah should have protected, why didn't it? So Morris said, because he had in his lectern, in the Stender, he had erotic material, Greek erotic material, and when he studied Torah, he was connected to that. And because he was connected to that, simultaneously, this actually soiled the Torah, meaning the spirituality of that Torah. Meaning in terms of the greatness of Torah was great, Remeir was able to extract the greatness and leave behind the impurity. But he himself, because he was connected at that level, which was his choice, he made a choice. That's the reason why he ended up misinterpreting the Torah, and this was the basis for what? For his cop-out. Although the Lord said he made a mistake. Because when it says Arichas Yom, it's not referring to physical life. It's speaking about Yom Shekula Oruch. That's speaking of the world to come. It's not speaking about the physical existence.
I think my point is that
Mayor prayed with Rebbe that he should be brought back to take him out of Gehenna. Originally, he didn't even go to Gehenna. His Torah protected him. He couldn't go to Gehenna, but he couldn't go to the world to come either. So he was in limbo. Acher. Remeir prayed that he should be able to go to Gehenna, to be purged, and after he's purged, he could go into the world, into Gan Eden, into the world to come. So ultimately, he made it there. But initially, if not for Remeir's intervention and praying that his Rebbe should be atoned, he didn't even go to Gehenna. Gehenna is what? Is the purging location. Only after he was purged, because the Gemara says that his burial location, and Remeir knew he didn't make it in, so he prayed, and all of a sudden, smoke started to come out of his grave. His grave started to smoke. And when Remeir saw the smoke coming out, this was a consolation for Remeir. He knew now his Rebbe is being punished, is being purged, that ultimately, when it's finished, he'll be able to go into the world to come. For that reason.
and then
the children of Avraham Avinu, when they just go to the entrance of Gehenna immediately, that's enough to purge them. But even the entrance has different degrees of whatever that means. But to go into Gehenna itself, if a person is circumcised, then basically he towed the line, not like Acher or that's sufficient, you go into the world to come. The reason why when a person dies for a month, for a year, the child says Kaddish, only for 11 months, not for 12 months, because you never know to what degree you have to be purged. So to say Kaddish for 12 months, a Russia stays in Gehenna more than 11 months. Everybody needs purging, but it could be for a nanosecond. It could be for a day. It could be for a month. but not more than 11 months. So if a child says Kaddish repair more than 11 months, it's a disrespect. That means the child is saying the father's a Russia. And therefore, a person only says Kaddish repair for 11 months for that reason. Because the child, every time he says Kaddish, it's a public Kiddush Hashem. He's sanctifying God's name in public. And the child being the child, that's sanctification accrues to the father. That's the value of saying Kaddish. It's a public Kiddush Hashem. And to daven for the Olah, to lead the service also, he's leading the Kiddush Hashem, the Tefillah, everything. After 11 months, he stops. He should not go beyond the 12-month period. The person's a Rasha, then the child said, once asked Rabbi Yoshev, Zech Tzaddik Levracha was his yahrzeit. Yesterday was Rabbi Yoshev's yahrzeit. I once asked him, there was a certain person, his father was a Baal Tshuva. He himself came from Baal Tshuva. I said, when his father dies, how long should he say Kaddish? So he said to me, every Baal Tshuva should say Kaddish for the parent for 12 months. It's 12 months. It's not a disrespect because factually the parent wasn't observant. Didn't keep the mitzvahs as he should have. As a result of that, that Baal Tshuva should say Kaddish for 12 months. Person's not a Baal Tshuva should not say it for more than 11 months. So there was a story. I asked him about a certain person where his father was more than a non-observant Jew. He popped out, ended up marrying that Jewish woman, so on and so forth. So I asked Rabbi Yoshev, should that person say Kaddish on behalf of his father? That's what I asked Rabbi Yoshev. Rabbi Yoshev says he should not say Kaddish. That because he failed so extremely, he went way out to marry a non-Jew, which had tremendous negative consequences, he should not say Kaddish. That's what Rabbi Yoshev said to me. He should not say Kaddish. If he wants to say Kaddish, he could say Kaddish, but he has no obligation to say Kaddish because of to the degree that his father had failed. I know people have to leave early today because it's Rosh Chodesh, but just gonna do whatever we have to do and whatever time's left we have.
I'm just gonna go prepare. Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, have a good Chodesh.
Chodesh
Tov. So he says everything is preordained, what you're supposed to earn, what you're supposed to be, and ultimately you're going to earn what you're supposed to earn if you take the initiatives. But if you succeed, you should not think for a moment that the reason why you succeeded was because you did what you did. You have to take initiative. But if you take initiative, you're going to get what you're supposed to have. And you have to understand it. What is the reason why you received it? Because Hashem ordained that you should receive it. You should succeed. It's not simple. I'll give you an example. A person succeeds in business. He's ecstatic. And he tells his wife what kind of client he has, what this, and how lucky he is, this and that. When he expresses it in a certain way, he's leaving the benefactor out of the picture. He's leaving him out of the picture. What Hashem? It's true. Hashem sent you the best client, the best lender, the best opportunity. But why did you succeed? Because Hashem gave you that best opportunity. That's why you succeeded. It could have come about anyway, but you have to understand you have to trace it to the source. And if a person leaves Hashem on the back burner, it's not so simple. It's going to happen again. And it's a challenge. So you have to know when you express yourself and even when you're thankful, where the emphasis is on. How thankful are you? It's not simple. Every day we say Modim. We give thanks to Hashem. What's the first thing we give the thanks? We say Oleinu, Lein l'shabech l'Adon HaKol. We give thanks to Adon HaKol, to the master of everything. L'aseistu liyotzim bereishis, the greatness, to the one who brought everything into existence. What is the first thing that we thank Hashem for? Shelo asanu go yerotzos. We did not create us like all the nations of the world. That's the first thanks. It has nothing to do with our health. It has nothing to do with anything else. It has to do with our relationship. That's it. We're different than everybody else. That's what we're thanking Hashem. That's what we're giving all the praise. It's not because wealth and Torah, nothing. Firstly, you did not make us like all the other nations of the world. Why are we so fortunate? We're speaking about our spirituality. We say Shema, the Goyim don't say Shema. We say Elokeinu. To the non-Jew, it's not Elokeinu. That personalization is not there. We're fortunate we could say that. What's the first thing we give thanks to Hashem? Shatohu Hashem Elokeinu. That's the first thanks. That you're our God. Then we talk about other things. The goodness, the miracles, the wonders, that's afterwards. But first and foremost, before we talk about everything else that follows, Shatohu Hashem Elokeinu. That's the first thing. Once you have that clear, everything follows from that. But if that is not in your mindset, Hashem Elokeinu, and you don't feel fortunate, if that is not first and foremost, then Hashem takes the back burner. And if he takes the back burner, who are you thankful to? The client, your architect. Why do you have such a beautiful home? Because I was able to afford to pay for the best architect, whatever it is, the best interior designer. Is that what it's all about? Even if you mean L'Shem Shemayim, so I'll be able to do kiruv in my home. I want to be a Kiddush Hashem. You know, it's easy to say, it could be lip service. Kiddush Hashem, you can justify anything with Kiddush Hashem. I bring people to my house, and everybody talks about you. What a host. Hospitality is unbelievable. So do you think I'm fortunate I'm able to do kiruv and bring these people back? That's part of my objective in life, to be a positive influence. We're talking about it's a whole different level. We all delude ourselves. We connect ourselves slightly, like a person puts on a frock with a hat and he thinks he's a Rosh Hashiva because he downloaded a piece of Torah and then he sat at the table. All of a sudden, he looks the role. You're Rosh Hashiva. Or he buys Hasidic garb. He thinks he's a Rebbe sitting at the table, as they say, spearing Tish Friday night. And he'll tell over stories or whatever it is. You understand? The whole thing is a farce to a degree. So you have to be able to trace it to the source and understand it and express it. To who do you owe thanks? What's the cause of your success and your objective in life?
It's interesting to me, Rabbi.
1 second, I just did something here. 1 second, I'm trying to get this. You see me? Yeah. Okay, good. What's interesting?
It's interesting to me that the Shaliach Tzibur, he can pray for me in the repetition of the Shemona Esrei. He can pray for my health and my wealth and everything, right? We answer Amen.
He prays for
say thank you. To say thank you, it's the only thing that nobody can say thank you for you. You have to say Modim yourself.
Right.
Repetition.
You know who says that? That's that Avudraham. Avudraham is a Rishon. He has a commentary on the Tefillah. And that's the famous story of Rebbe Yoshev. I just mentioned it was as you said yesterday.
Yeah.
Rebbe Yoshev, Alan's a cardiologist. He needed a special heart procedure, operation, and there was only one surgeon from the Cleveland Clinic that was able to do it. And the surgeon came to Israel to operate on Rebbe Yoshev on his heart, and he brought his whole team because he would only operate if he has his team from the Cleveland Clinic. And there was a certain Jew in New York who paid all expenses to fly the surgeon with the team over to Israel. And Rebbe Yoshev gained 9 years on his life. Rebbe Yoshev lived till the age of 104 because of that procedure. And then the doctor came back to visit him to make sure things were going right. So Rebbe Yoshev himself asked the people who were closest to him, how do you say thank you in English? In English. Rebbe Yoshev didn't speak English. He spoke Yiddish, he spoke Hebrew, not English. So, and he practiced. Toda, thank you. I want to thank you. And he had it perfected, how to say it in English. When the surgeon came, he says to the surgeon, I want to thank you in English. So they asked him, why did you just say Toda? And someone would translate to the surgeon, thank you. See, he quoted this Avudraham that Alan's mentioning right now, that when it comes to thanks, you have to thank the person yourself. You can't have a representative thanking you. Thank that person. Therefore, he wanted to know exactly how to say it in English, to know what the words meant, to communicate it directly from himself to the person we benefit from.
Right.